You're listening to Literally First Class, the podcast for female founders behind multi-million-dollar brands and businesses. I'm your host, Keri Ford, creative director turned 3-time award-winning coach, real estate investor, mom, and the one-on-one private advisor for multi-7- and 8-figure firms. If you're ready to make your next million, expand your impact, and lead with even more confidence, you're in the right place. Let's take your life and business first class. Before we dive into today's episode, can I ask you a favor? Can you please go and review this podcast? It can be a single sentence. You can just go put a couple stars, whatever your honest review is, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're streaming. And we would love to get this podcast in more people's hands and ears that really need to hear this message. More female founders, more female badasses doing important, amazing work, but need the mentorship and the mindset in order to continue to elevate and to stay in the long game. So please pause it here and go review. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the business butterfly effect. You guys have been loving the newsletter lately. Let me just say, like from the one, especially about where I hired a new CEO, which I did a podcast episode on that as well, which is, my boo God. And the responses and replies that we got were probably the most that we've ever gotten from a newsletter. Like literally kept pouring in. I was getting text messages. People were tagging me in the Facebook group. Amazing. So today we're going to talk about the business butterfly effect, or the butterfly business effect, as I named it in the newsletter. Same idea. And I want to share this quote and start off today's episode with this. The flapping of a butterfly's wings can cause a hurricane halfway around the world. So I shared with you last week, or the week before, 2 episodes ago, I shared with you my story about how I came to recognize that God has always been in a relationship with me, but I hadn't been in a relationship consciously with him. And how I was so uncomfortable saying grace, even like at the table. And I just rejected everything that I thought was religion. And it's crazy because I realized that so many people have different experiences of religion. It depends on what they were raised with. It depends on their actual religion. It depends on the church. It depends on the pastor. It depends on the influence in their life. And what it comes down to is what God means to you and for you. And that is on an individual basis. Everybody, brings to the table their set of beliefs and experiences that shape that. So anyway, fast forward, here I am. I was invited by a friend of mine after I went to an event in Miami who invited me to a 5 a.m. prayer club. And I had no idea what to expect. I've actually never started my day with prayer. I've never opened the Bible first thing in the morning to sit and, read an excerpt, a passage, and pray over it. In fact, I've never started my day that way. I've only ever started my day either by diving right into work, doing meditation, maybe doing, going for a walk, something like that, doing a workout way back in the day. I subscribed 100% to the rise and grind, but this was a different kind of rise and grind. This was, really positioning my heart and anchoring in faith in a posture that orients everything throughout the day from this space. And that's important because everything that I was building, thereafter in the hours, minutes, day to follow from this prayer was exponentially more energetic. I felt like I was tapping into this infinite well of wisdom and infinite divine intelligence that I can continue to create from, because there's a lot of hats that you wear, and you're running a team, you're running your house, you're friggin' in charge everywhere, right? And you're constantly sliding into different roles and dynamics throughout the day, and it takes a lot out of you. It really does. But what better way to start your day than with prayer or intention about how you want your day to look? Maybe you already do this, which is really cool. But what I realized is that, One decision can create ripples that change the course of your life in ways that you literally can't even imagine. Because if somebody told me like a year ago even that I'd be waking up at 4:45 to join a prayer club, I'd be like, huh? Like what? But it's so perfectly guided always. And so I thought back to the breadcrumb trail that, in retrospect, and it's only in hindsight that we have all this information where we see God working in our lives and we see the path that has been set out before us, but we might only have the step that we're in. And so if you feel like there is a big staircase in front of you, a big mountain to climb, a big goal to reach, as many of you beautiful, amazing high achievers set out to create, whether it's to 10x your company or expand your team or to reach more people and change more lives, because that's who you are and that's the calling on your heart. Like, how could we not incorporate God into that strategy, right? A spiritual strategy, the somatic strategy, and how that attunes us and prepares us for the greater good. So I was thinking back though to this breadcrumb trail, and you only have that information after you've gone through it and you can look back and be like, oh yeah, that one thing, that one yes turned into this, which turned into meeting that person, which turned into that conversation, which turned into, this invitation and turned into that yes. And all of these things collectively over time added up to prepare me and to train me for this exact moment right now. Because had I not had all of those pieces in place and all of those yeses and all of those invitations, I don't know that I would have recognized the opportunity in front of me right now. And I don't know that I could have been prepared enough to have the clarity about what's to come ahead or what I want to create, right? The horizon line way, way down. We spend so much time with, our goggles on our face and our face head down in the water looking at the fish and the coral and the shells, which are beautiful, right underneath our feet. But what about looking ahead? And this is kind of the opposite of what I talk about oftentimes, because we do spend a lot of time looking ahead, so much so that some of us have a lot of trouble staying present and staying grounded and looking at where our feet are. But if we don't pick our head up out of the water every once in a while and look ahead at the big picture, we can lose sight. We can kind of get lost in the sauce of what is, right? The emotional swirl, the circular nature of healing. And we realize we're not really going anywhere except in circles. We haven't really moved anywhere because we're so focused on where our feet currently are. But what about what brought you here and how that serves you in moving forward? Like if you were to take a moment and look back at all the smallest moments that led you here, what would those look like? What did you have to say yes to in order to say yes to what the future is calling you to do? How has that prepared you? For me, it was probably my divorce. That wasn't really a yes that I wanted to say yes to, if I'm being honest. It was one of the darkest times of my life. It was in 2018-ish era, and it was one of the darkest seasons of my life, but I just knew that also was the way that God got my attention. And I shared that again. Do you want to go back 2 episodes, and we'll put that link in the show notes. 2 episodes ago, I shared that story where I could hear God and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I'm like, am I losing my mind? Have I gone off the deep end? Am I going crazy? This is insane. Right? So for me, it started with the divorce, and then it started with the yes to quit that corporate job. And then I decided to invest in an 8-week program, and it was $5,000. I remember this conversation like it was yesterday. There was this sales coach or sales guy that I was on a call with for this coach. And I love this coach. She's still a dear friend. And he just was like, yep, it's $5,000 for 8 weeks. And I was like, in my brain, I was like, what? That's crazy. I was completely sticker shocked. I had nothing to base that on. So I got really nervous. I started asking a bunch of questions, and he goes, I don't think you're ready. And I got off the phone and I'm like, what? I was pissed. I was like, that guy's an asshole. Some of you may have heard this story. And I sat there with myself and I questioned, why am I so triggered by this? Why am I so upset? by him saying I'm not ready. And I was like, well, I arrived at the place, which was that I am ready, or I wouldn't have been on that call. And so I texted him and I said, I am ready and I'm all in and I'm going to pay the 5K in full. And I said, yes. And that decision changed everything for me, because then I decided to hire another coach who introduced me to a mastermind. And then I decided to join the mastermind, which had in-person events like in Nashville and Cabo and Austin. And I had never done a mastermind. And this was actually during COVID, which was kind of crazy to be traveling during that time. But I knew I needed to be in these rooms. And every time I left, I felt expanded. I felt elevated. I just felt different. Something changed in me every single time I put myself in those rooms. And it definitely moved the needle more, I would say, when I was in an in-person room. I think there's just something viscerally that you feel in your body. But virtually, you can also experience this shift too. Like, how many of you have ever been in a virtual mastermind or in a Zoom room or on a call with someone, and like suddenly you're having the conversation you didn't know you needed to have? Suddenly your mind is expanded in ways you didn't know it needed to be, because you didn't know that existed. You didn't know that was a possibility in the realm of this close proximity. That matters. When I started to have friends that were like, oh yeah, I had 200K week, or I went from 500K to 12 million in 2 years, or I have 1 million views per YouTube video and make an 80K residual check off that from ads. You're like, what? So suddenly your brain is it's like melted. It is so not the same, because you're having conversations about things that you didn't even know were within reach. And that's the part that changes it all. And I remember there was this specific speaker in Cabo, and she and I didn't know who she was. She was one of the speakers. And at the time, again, during COVID, she was in a virtual Zoom setting for us in person at this mastermind. And I decided to reach out and connect with her, and we became friends. And then I decided to invite her into Clubhouse. You remember that app? Like, does anyone use it anymore? Where I was hosting these rooms, and then she brought her friends. And I decided to connect with them on social media. And it was one of those connections that invited me to this Miami event recently. And then it was one of her friends that introduced me to the 5 a.m. prayer club. And so I share that with you because you don't really know God's plan until you look back and you're like, oh my, how could I have ever worried? I was always being led. I was always being guided to be here right now. But now it's time to pick my head up out of the water and look for the horizon line. What is this calling me to do, and how did this prepare me to hold the future that I am creating? And notice the word that I am using throughout all of this as I describe it. I decided, because to decide means to cut away all other options. That's what it means. Because once you decide to go all in, the universe has no other option but to conspire and make that true. So it'll start to put people and places in your path that make that a reality. But where most people lose their footing is that it also clears things that aren't aligned to this new decision. And so most people think, oh no, did I make the wrong decision? Oh no, all this stuff, like shit's hitting the fan. Like all this stuff is happening all at once. Like I just decided I want to up-level my team, and now my current team is like, people are quitting, people are acting out. Yeah, welcome to the up level. I always say when one of my clients makes a new decision, saddle up, because things are about to change and they're probably going to change fast. And that's exactly why they hire me, to help them stabilize, normalize, and neutralize all these changes so they don't self-sabotage, so they don't go back to what we call the rubber band effect, where you want to go back to what's comfortable and familiar, and you start to doubt yourself and you're like, oh shit, did I make the wrong choice? You didn't make the wrong choice. But everything that's not right has to be corrected. It has to be realigned, right? This is the realignment process that has to happen. So wherever you are, don't forget to lift your head up out of the water and look ahead to that horizon line. Think about all the lessons and all the decisions and the breadcrumb trail that's been revealed to you. and think about how you're going to carry that into your next season, because we have the whole year ahead. I have my entire year mapped out, actually. And this is probably the first time I've had it this mapped out. We have, hold on, I need to count. 4 in-person events and 10 virtual events. And that's just as of January 21st, the time of recording. We might add things. I don't think we're going to take anything away because I've mapped it all out. But I want to invite you into those rooms and give you a chance to be with those women, the women that can bring you into a conversation, introduce you to a new network that you didn't know you needed. Or maybe you do know you need it. Maybe you're like, man, this is a lonely game. I need to find my people. This is your room. So at the time of recording, and by the time this episode drops, you're probably going to miss the first Founders Roundtable, but I'm introducing a new series called the Founders Roundtable. And what this is it's a virtual live show. There will be no replays. This is only for women between the 7, 8, and even 9-figure mark in company revenue. And the reason is because at that level, there's just a different set of challenges. There just is. Like overhead is high, pressure is high, stakes are high, and you're responsible for everything. You have a team. It's just a totally different season of business, and I want to make sure that you're in the right room. So if that's you and you want to be part of these conversations, we're holding them and hosting them almost nearly every month. And the reason it's not every month is because we have those other 4 in-person events, and my calendar's pretty full with travel and making sure that I'm in my highest self to serve and hold those rooms. So I'm going to put the link below here where you can register for upcoming Founders Roundtable events. You'll have to register each and every time that you want to be part of that room because the topics are going to change, and so will the panels, the panelists. So the panelists this time are Kim Shaper, who is a hormone expert, fitness coach. She's been in the game. She's like an OG. She's been around forever with fitness. It's amazing the work that she does, and she specifically focuses on women in the perimenopausal stage of life and helping them prioritize self-care, working out, and taking care of their body, even as they hold success and go through yet another change in their life. There's so many seasons we go through. And then I have my dear friend Makosi, who is a royal shaman, and she brings the spiritual component to the literal damn table. She's amazing. She talks about wealth consciousness. She's funny, she's fresh, she's honest. And she's just a good human. So I really love bringing her into the conversation. And then we have another friend of mine, Sarah Cannell, who is a best-selling author. She's like personal friends with Richard Rohr, and she helps you get your book published so that you can create an additional revenue stream in your business and become a paid speaker as well. So 3 really different, unique speakers. And we're talking all about future-proofing your business and how longevity is the strategy. So you can see, like, it's a very curated room. It's a very specific panel. Again, you probably are going to miss that first one, but we'll go ahead and put a link in for the next one. And then that way you can get into the room because they're going to be done every single month, almost. And then, of course, we have our Champagne Club. And that Champagne Club, oh my gosh, what a fun room that is. It's in person, February 22nd. It starts with a somatic leadership workshop in the morning, and then it ends with a luxurious sit-down, coursed-out meal where we get all dressed up in our champagne-colored outfits. And the room is just such a warm, welcoming, sit-with-me group. We have 24 total seats, and at the time of recording, we're more than halfway sold out. So chances are that one might be sold out. But you can come to the May 3rd event here in Atlanta as well, and we'll leave that link below. It's called the Champagne Club, and then we're hosting our last one of the year, October 11th, in Miami. And yes, we are selling tickets now for all 3 events because people are buying tickets for all 3 events. So get in the room, put yourself in rooms where you get to elevate. Consider this a sign into your next level initiation where you get to lock arms with other powerhouse women doing incredible things in the world. And if nothing else, you just get to be a fly on the wall or just make some new friends, right? But it's really an amazing networking opportunity. And I think it's inevitable you're going to glean some absolute nuggets of wisdom by being part of and connected to these rooms. So I hope that's helpful. for today. Again, I'm going to echo my request at the beginning of this episode, which is please, please, please go and review this podcast wherever you're streaming. Stop the podcast right now, go on Spotify or Apple Podcast, and let's get this podcast in the hands of more people. I've got some great things planned for you guys this year, and I'm just so happy and grateful that you're part of this community. All right, keep it first class.
Thanks for tuning in to Literally First Class. If today's episode inspired you, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps us reach even more incredible women like you who are ready to level up, lead with impact, and make first-class moves. I'll see you in the next episode, but until then, keep dreaming big and taking bold action.